Hey, before we get to today's great episode, wanted to let you know of a new exciting thing going on for the Lounge. For the first time since we started this podcast, the Lounge has entered into a partnership with a company that is aligned in how we think. Completely stop gambling. So Betttr is giving away 200 free subscriptions for life to the first 200 users from this podcast. Download Betttr, find the link in the show notes, or searching Betttr in your app store. So it's Betttr, BETTR, quit gambling. Search for that on the App Store or click into the link in the podcast show notes. So I'll see you on Betttr. And now to today's episode. Welcome into the Gambling Recovery Lounge. My name is Eric, and I'm a compulsive gambler in recovery. My last bet was June 15th of 2021. It's great to have everybody back into the lounge. This is experience number 9. Super excited for the interview that we have this evening. We are going to bring in my brother in recovery and friend, Robert. So really looking forward to the conversation tonight with Robert. He has an extraordinary amount of time in the recovery space. So we're going to get into a lot of conversation about his life, his story, what's happened for him in recovery over the 30 plus years since he started in recovery. There's certainly a relapse story as part of that. So we're going to get into a lot of good stuff with Robert. And he's one of the great people in the recovery rooms that I've met over the last few years, who's very, very passionate about recovery and brings an incredible amount of enthusiasm to it. So I'm really, really excited to have Robert with us tonight. So with that, Robert, welcome into the lounge. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing really great, and it's great to be here, and I really appreciate what you've created, and thanks for allowing me this opportunity.
Awesome. So what we like to do at the beginning, for those that have heard the last several episodes, and Robert and I talked a little bit about this, is we go right into the kind of the icebreaker of talking about what recovery song is relatable to each of us in our journeys. And Robert has a super interesting, unique story on this. So Robert, I'm just going to turn it over to you to talk about the song. And then I think we're going to have a little actual song go on live here.
Yeah, thank you. You know, I got a lot of favorite songs. I went to Woodstock, by the way. But you know, I'm not a trained musician, but as a hobby, you know, I play the guitar, and I I had a crappy old guitar when I first joined this program in '93, and you know, I used to go to I gambled every day, and I went to the racetrack every weekend, and I always wanted a nice guitar, you know, so I would go to Guitar Center in the morning on Saturday morning, and I'd play these Martin guitars and these beautiful guitars that were $1,800 and $2,200. And I go, God, I wish I can afford that. I wish I can afford that. And then fast forward, I'd go to the track and I'd lose $1,800 at the racetrack or $2,200 at the racetrack.
Mm.
And the next Saturday, I go back and go, man, if I could only afford these guitars, I want these guitars so badly, and blah, blah, blah. So fast forward, I stopped, when I stopped gambling and got into GA, you know, I had significant debt, but I paid a lot of my debt back. And finally, I was able to get a guitar. And I actually got this guitar, which is an Ovation.
Wow, very nice.
And it's the same one that Melissa Etheridge plays. And
Okay.
and it was $1,800. So I bought this guitar, and I'm just, like I said, self-taught. But then Dave Kay, my sponsor, who I met when I first came into the program, he said to me, "Hey man, that's a great guitar. Why don't you write a musical share? Like take one of your shares and your experience and put it to music."
Okay.
So you know, that was an assignment from my sponsor.
Okay.
And that was in 1998, by the way.
All right.
So the next thing, I'm a horse addict. So the next thing you know, came Last Call to the Races. That's the name of the song. It's called Last Call to the Races.
All right.
And it's ironic that, you know, the call to the races, that
I know it all too well, being a
that
horse
was my
player
favorite
myself.
song. That was
Yeah.
my favorite song,
Yeah.
not the Beatles or the Stones. And then ironically, there's notes to taps when they blow at your funeral. They're the exact same notes.
Mm.
Da, 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 da. And then
Well,
even further ironically, the words to reveille, which is wake up, da, 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 they're all the same notes.
all related to
All
our
of the races,
demise. Yeah.
cap and reveille. Anyway, so this is a musical sure about my horse racing and what happened in the beginning. And I'm just going to play this and hopefully it comes through.
Awesome. Take it away.
This is the last call to the races. Well, I used to go to the track. I'd lose, but I'd keep on going back. I used to think that I was cool, but I was just a gambling fool. But that was then, and this is now. I'm here in GA learning how to play on a track where I win. I used to bet on every horse. I always thought that I would win, of course. It never really worked out that way. They buried me each and every day. Then I realized I was the cause. Lights went on, please no applause. There's no way to win at that game. I used to stare at those odds. I prayed to those gambling gods. I prayed they'd give me a winner. They treated me like some gambling sinner. But now I found my real God. He's here with me inside this bod. I'm learning how to love him. And the last time that I went to the track, I swore that I never would go back. The last time that I walked away, I heard a voice inside of me say, well, grow up, Bobby, be a man. With GA's help, I know I can. I found my big payday. Gambling, whoops. Every time I read that yellow combo book, it forces me to take a deeper look. It's all right there in 17 tiny pages. The key to a better life with no more cages. Well, I answered 20 questions right. I surrendered and I won. That's right. And there's a meeting every night. Yes, gambling will not be my demise. I now hang with wonderful guys and girls too. I'm learning how to be all that I can. And GA has handed me the plan. Well, I finally know how to beat the odds, work the steps, I'm sure, because it's a winning plan. Right here, we take our stand. I'm a lifetime GA man, the finest program in the land. Work the steps, be of service, get to the meeting or pick up the phone.
That was fantastic. Oh my God. And I could relate to God, all of it, every word of it, from the horses to the combo book to the meetings to everything. So thanks
You
for
know,
doing that. That's tremendous courage to
thanks,
come on
mate.
and do
And
something like
you
that.
know, I wrote that, and I played it for Dave, and then I played it on my fifth birthday. I actually played it in the room on a birthday, and I've had an opportunity to play this. And I'm not a performer, but it's the music, it's a message. So
Absolutely.
thanks for the platform.
It was heard loud and clear. So yeah, and I think what's going to be really cool about tonight's interview with Robert is it's going to be a lot of heavy talk about recovery and a lot of talk about GA. And not every episode has been that. Many of the guests certainly have paved their way through GA. But this is going to be a little bit more heavy centric talking about GA. So if you're somebody who's gotten recovery through GA, or have curiosity about it, I think you're going to really relate a lot to this episode. And if you're someone who's a doubter, and hasn't been able to go down that path, then this is an opportunity to have an open mind and just listen to all the wisdom, and experience, strength, and hope that Robert gives us this evening. And maybe you'll come away from it with a little bit of a different thought and a willingness that you didn't have before. So I think some great opportunity to get into some really good stuff, and I think we're going to have a lot of fun along the way too. So let's kick it off. Robert, talk about the date of your abstinence.
My current date of abstinence, it was May 22nd of 2009, and which is about, if I have like, four,
15
14 years,
plus years.
15
Yeah.
and a half years exactly, May
Yep.
22nd, 2009. But my first GA meeting was August 10th of 1993.
Nice.
Now,
Yep.
the one thing I did was I did something really foolish, and I was not straightforward, and I actually gambled with after I had a lot of time and didn't have the courage to go back to zero. And
We'll
and
definitely get into all of that
we'll get into
story
all
because
that. Yeah, but
yeah, because you built up, I think, about 15 years of time from
right.
93 to about 08 to 09. So, and
Mhm.
then we'll get into what happened at that point and then what kind of went on from there. But if you could maybe talk a little bit about just briefly about your family upbringing, what was, where was it? What was it like for you? Family kind of dynamic was relative to parents, siblings, et cetera. And then we'll kind of take it from there as far as how gambling gets introduced to you.
I'm going to be 74. I grew up in northeastern Pennsylvania. I was born in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, actually, and 1950. And I, you know, I, it's really funny that my first experience is taking a chance and a risk was spinning a dreidel on Hanukkah. The olive base Gimel Daled, take one out, put two in, wipe out the pot, or get nothing. But we were playing for chocolate coins with my. I was one of three. I had an older brother and two younger sisters, and chocolate coins. That was during the holiday of Hanukkah. That was a tradition. But then came January, and it was like, hey, can we? What do you want to do? Let's play dreidel. Let's get the dreidel out, and then also we had our piggy banks. Let's forget the chocolate. Let's play for pennies, nickels, dimes, and quarters.
Mm.
All I wanted to do was spin that dreidel. It's very funny. So that was my first casino, was a dreidel.
So you were what, 7, 8 years
Yes,
old at the time?
exactly. I was young, six,
Okay.
seven. I don't even remember, but it was I was a young kid,
And you had
and
two siblings. Now,
I,
had
so
you,
I had an older brother and two younger sisters. We were all, my brother's
s-
2 years old.
all
So
right.
they're
Now,
from
where were you influenced in the house? Did you have, whether it was your parents or relatives, like how did the idea of any of you at those ages just even think about something simple like playing for coins, dreidel? Like, did that
Yeah,
come from somewhere? Or?
I don't know how that evolved, but fast forward about a few years later, I think I was 10, and we all packed into the car. There were no seatbelt rules back then, by the way. We packed four of us in the back seat of the car. We drove to Maryland to visit my aunt, and it was for a long weekend or something. And one night she goes, "Come on, we're going to go play the slot machines." And I didn't even know what a slot machine was.
Mhm.
I was a 10-year-old kid. So we drove to this place in Maryland on the Chesapeake Bay because we were going for hard shell crabs. And here's this place with all these casinos. And they handed me a Dixie cup. That's a little paper cup, if you don't know. They handed me a Dixie cup
Yep.
full of nickels, maybe 20 or 30 nickels.
Mhm.
And these were old fashioned slots, none of this electronic stuff. And it was like lemons, cherries, and plums, or whatever.
I
And
remember those.
yeah,
Yeah.
so the bottom line is those nickels ran out really quickly, and
Mhm.
I wanted more nickels, and there were no more nickels for Bob, and that because that was it. That was my cup, and it was over. And I was screaming in this casino or whatever it was. I was jumping up and down and throwing a fit. And they took me out to the car. They had to take me out to the car, and they literally put me in the car, closed the doors, and that was it. And I missed
Wow.
the dinner. And I
So you're like
really.
a caged animal right away with gambling.
Exactly. It was like I needed more nickels, and it was not going to happen. So, so you know, that was an experience that I remember. And my dad was not a gambler, nor was my mom, and nobody really in my family that I'm aware of was ever a gambler.
Mhm.
But the way I was brought up, listen, I love my mom and dad. They did the best they could, and thank God I had a chance to make some serious amends with them. But I started gambling. I fast forward, I got a job. My first job, I was 14 years old, and I got a job in a drugstore. after school, and the minimum wage was $1.65 an hour. And I worked from 3 to 7, 4 hours at $1.65. So I made about $8 or $7.60, whatever that
Mhm.
was. I did it 5 days a week. And there was an older kid there. His name was Curly. He was a delivery boy, so he already had a driver's license. And he was a cool kid. He's older, and I would really kind of idolized him. And he said, "Hey, Robert, I want to introduce you to a bookie, and you could bet football games $25 a game."
Mhm.
$25 a game, and it takes 3 hours. It would take you 30 hours to earn, 25 bucks.
Right.
And that I said, "You're kidding, And he goes, "No, I'm not." So he introduced me to this guy, and I had a bookie, and I love football, and the next thing you know, I'm betting football games. And I got in the beginning, I got lucky. I won a couple bets, and I said, "Wow, this is incredible." And then what happens. The bets
Mhm.
got bigger, and then I owed the bookie money that I didn't have at the age of 15, 16. And so then I stole some money, from my dad, and really it was pretty ugly. I mean, there was a time when my parents would be sleeping, and I would crawl on my stomach into their bedroom,
Mhm.
get my dad's wallet, take money out of his wallet while they were sleeping. He was a big guy. If he ever woke up, he would have killed me. And there were many episodes in my life as I got older and older when he wanted to kill me. But so that's how it all started. Uh,
Now, did you have friends that were also into football and did any of that kind of betting with you, or was just this
no,
this
it
one
was just
bookie you met?
It was just me, and then and I would I mean it made me a kind of a big shot because every once in a while I won, and then I had like $100 in my pocket, and it's like wow, not that many kids back in 64, 65 had $100 in their pocket.
Right.
And that's where the big shot is and came in,
Okay.
and then but I came to realize a lot longer, Eric, that once again, my parents they did the absolute best they could, but I never got enough. I never got enough. And I always wanted more. And I swear to God, I said to my mom once, "Why did you have 4 kids? If there were just two of us, we'd have so much more, you know?" And, but, it was a different time in the world where I was never had a chance to express my feelings or my emotions. It was like if I was crying or something was going on, they'd say, "Go to your room. And when you're finished crying, come back." Like what was going on, or honey, why are you crying? That was not part of the equation back then.
Right.
So I really wasn't heard. I didn't have a chance to be heard. But when I started gambling, I was heard crystal clear.
Mhm.
Give me $25 on Penn State. And then later when I got into the racetrack, give me 100 on number three, and on and on and on. I was crystal clear heard, and that made me feel real important and like a real big shot. So that's really the genetics of my
Okay.
gambling. And it
Yeah.
got worse. It got worse, obviously, over time.
So that's really interesting. Yeah, because I think we always find when we get into recovery and we look back, we find that it stemmed from some kind of emotional distress for all of us in some kind of way. Some much more severe than others. Sometimes there's abuse, etc. Right? In my case, as I've talked about it, it was the fact that I couldn't come to the realization of who I was as a person being gay, and it took me 10 years from 12 to 22 to figure out who I was. So I ran scared to death and away from everything because of fear, and also not having a voice that felt like had an open space to be heard. So I kind of related to what you were saying. So would you say that that's where gambling and it took off for you, as you found a space where your voice could be heard finally, and it was within the gambling realm? That's where it was for you.
Yeah, correct. And once again, it was also a chance to holy macro, I could have some money. I could get some real money, and my allowance, I think was $5 a week. I forget what it was, but it
Mm.
clearly it wasn't even enough back then.
Right.
And then listen, I had a berserk incident with this kid Curly. Now I'm 16
Mm.
and I'm still working. I'm like a junior or senior junior in high school, and I'm still working. And Curly goes, and my dad was in the sweater business. He manufactured uniform sweaters for mailmen and policemen, and there was these big, heavy, thick wool sweaters. And he had a warehouse full of sweaters. And then this guy Curly goes, "Robert, steal some sweaters from your dad's warehouse.
Oh no.
Steal some sweaters from your dad's warehouse. And I know this jockey or a silky at the harness racing and at Pocono Downs. And they exercise these horses at 5 in the morning and it's like 40 degrees. We'll give him a couple sweaters and he's going to give us information on a horse race.
Mm.
So I'm going, oh my God, you kidding? So the next thing you know, I'm a thief. Now I'm stole sweaters. Went to my dad's house, took like four sweaters, these big black, warm, thick wool sweaters. We drive. He picks me up. We drive out to the track where they're exercising these horses, and I give this guy the sweaters. No need to. I remember his name, but there's no need to mention his name. And he goes, Wednesday night, fourth race. If there's an equipment change, that means in harness racing, sometimes when the horses are already out on the track,
Mhm.
they go back to the paddock to change a saddle or a strap or
Yep.
something.
Yep.
He goes, if there's an equipment change and I go back to the paddock to change the set, whatever it was, he goes, that means the fix is on.
Mhm.
Oh my God, this is incredible. So I'm had to sneak into the track because I was only 16.
Yeah.
We sneak into the track and I had like I think I had $80, and I didn't even we're waiting and waiting. Here comes the fourth race and they announced the horses and they're walking. All of a sudden there'll be an equipment change, number four. And
Wow.
my heart started pounding. So I almost didn't even know how to bet. I gave the $80 to Curly and he bet exactas and trifle, whatever, who knows what it was. But anyway, so this horse wire to wire wins this race and I win about $1,400, $1,480.
Wow.
And this is in 66. And, I chased that race for the next 35 years. But the bottom line is I had all this money. Then I went home and I bought a stereo and I bought a bicycle.
Mhm.
And my father goes, what's going on here with your $1.65 an hour?
Right.
What's going on here, son?
Right.
So I was busted flat right there, and I had to dad and I told him what happened and it was pretty intense. But so I got into gambling on a fixed race, you know?
Wow. Now, had you told your dad about that crawling in and taking
N-
money to that
No,
point?
I did. Yes, eventually I did when I was much older,
Okay.
much older.
Got
But
it.
other incidents with my father, like I had these uh my bar mitzvah was in 1963 and I got about $10,000 worth of US savings bonds that mature in 10 years. Okay. And he had them in his closet. And I came back like for my junior year in college or whatever. And I went into his closet and I cashed in those bonds early, like 3 years or 4 years before they matured. So there was about maybe it was 10,000 worth of bonds, but maybe I got whatever it was.
Mhm.
And I just took it and I did it. And the next thing you know, I don't know when it was. I come home and my dad goes, "Hey, son, I have something for you. I'll be right back." And this is like when they would have been fully matured. I don't, and so he went up to his room and came, and they were gone.
Mm.
He came downstairs, and I said, "Dad, I had to confess once again, busted as busted it could be." And that was crazy. And then so I got caught a lot. And when I finally went away to school, my once again, my dad was a hardworking guy and he wanted his four kids to go through college and he never went to college. And that was, so I got really fortunate. He paid my tuition, my hotel, I mean, yeah, my tuition, my apartment, my books, an allowance, food, paid for everything, and all I had to do was go to school. But I was at Penn State, I'm gambling like a maniac, playing
Mm.
poker and, you know, got a bookie there and on and on and on.
Sports fun.
And the bottom line is I found out on my own signature that I could borrow money from the Pennsylvania Higher Education Assistance Agency. I could borrow $17,000 a year. And so in my junior and my sophomore, junior, and senior year, I filled out these applications and I got $17,000 a year for 3 years.
Wow.
So when I graduated from college, I owed the state of Pennsylvania $51,000. 51,000. And my opening salary for my first job out of college was 14,500.
Wow.
My
So
first
yeah, you were already in
I
way over your head.
creamed. I was creamed. And
Yeah.
also when my dad found out that I owed the state of Pennsylvania $51,000 after he paid for his hard sweat and tears for my
Hmm.
education, that was pretty intense.
Yeah. Now that
And
your siblings through all this, they
My
never
step,
they never really
no,
gambled
no, I
after
never
that
really
service.
gambled, but I took
Okay.
advantage of my brother, my older brother. I mean, I stole from him, and
Mm,
he had later on, he had a company, and I went in and I took one of the checks from his company, and I, wrote a check. I was working for him a little bit. I forget the exact scenario, but I took a check and I wrote it, paid to the order of Robert G. 500 bucks, whatever it was. And in those days, it took a week for a check to clear and come back, or you didn't get your statement for whatever. But when we saw that check, it was pretty intense. And I borrowed money from my cousins, and I borrowed money from anybody that was willing to lend it to me. But I was really stuck bright and early, and the only way out was to continue.
yeah.
And then I got credit cards and on and on and on. But
Now, had you been dating at all at this point, and had to explain to any women you were dating what, like, not at
no,
all?
they didn't really get it. I mean, yeah, I was dating. I was always dating. I always had girlfriends, and and I was a big shot. Even at Penn State in college, I was picking up checks, and I started a business in school. It's a berserk business, and I made a lot of money
Mm,
with this business, and that just fueled more activity. Um, but the bottom line is, and I'm just going back to my dad. Like he used to catch me gambling. Like there was a diner. We went for dinner, and there were pinball machines in the bathroom, and there was a pinball machine that had no flippers, and there were 70, there was 100 numbers. The holes like golf hole. And if you pulled the ping, you shot the ball, and if you got five in a row, like 16, 17, it paid 500 points, and they would pay you a nickel a point. But so this is a slot machine without flippers, and just try to get five in a row. So I would have a pocket full of quarters, and I'd go in there. I'd say, Dad, I'm going to the bathroom. My family's there. I'd be in the bathroom for like 20 minutes. Finally, my father comes in and he sees me on this machine.
mm,
It was just, crazy shit like that.
wow. Okay, so you graduate from Penn State, you have all this debt. You're at this point, you probably still don't even understand you're a gambling addict, right? Because back
Right.
then there was no diagnosis for it. Nobody really
Right.
understood it, right? So then what kind of starts to evolve in your life at that point?
Well, as I mentioned, I got my first job. I worked in New York City. I was working for Hilton Hotels and sales and marketing. I moved to New York, and my friend was already there living. I shared an apartment with him, on the ground floor on the 83rd and 6th. And I got a New York bookie, like the first or second weekend I was there. And this guy was really intense. And his name was Alan, and I lost a lot of money. Like it was the first football season, and he gave me a pretty big credit line, and I won in the beginning, and then I owed him a lot of money. I owed him like 4 grand, and like I said, I was only taking home like 400 a week after taxes, and this guy got really nasty and really threatened me. So I called my mom, and I told her, Mom, I have a bookie in New York, and he's threatening. Please, can you help me? And she drove to New York like 2.5 hours, came to my apartment, and she gave me like $3,600 for this bookie. And I was crying, and I said, Mom, I promise I'm done. I promise I'm done. And I was done until next Saturday.
Right.
She left. She came. That was it, and it just continued and continued. The bets got bigger,
Mhm.
and that was all sports. No more, not really into horses that race at that time, but it was just sports. It was living in New York City and
Yeah.
going to the Nick games, and just it was all sports. But
Okay.
and the bets got bigger and bigger and bigger, and I got I was able to get credit cards, and I got they give you these credit cards, and next thing you know, I had like 10 credit cards, and on and on and on. And I also remember go back to Penn State. They had the first ATM machine in the United States was test marketed
Oh, really?
at Penn State. And they gave her a name. It was Rosie, the automatic teller. Okay. And
Never
and it
heard
was
that.
it was unbelievable that at 2 o'clock in the morning you get cash. You could never do that before. You had to go to the bank and get cash. You had to cash a check and get the cash. I'm telling you, that's how old I am. Okay. It was like the beginning of ATM machines. And so you're playing poker in the dorms or whatever, and next thing you don't have any money, but you have a checking account, and then you could go and get real cash at 2 in the morning. It was
Yeah.
incredible. I'm,
Wow. Okay.
I'm off track.
No, 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 no. It's all great and totally relative. So that you're just now running up debt all over the place, credit cards, you're just loans. The stories are very familiar. I've done all that too. So it's about at this point action, action, action. It can't come fast enough. It can't come big enough. You're knee deep in the thick of it, way over your head. Yeah.
Yes, and the only way out was, as I said, was continue.
Yep.
So, even now, fast forward a few more years, I moved to California, and I get into sales and I'm on commission selling and I'm pretty good at what I do. And I had a lot of early success at my job, but I was still flat broke all the time. And then I get my boss, like I'm the number one salesman then, and I go and I said, hey, his name was Bob, I'm buried alive. I'm really in a lot of debt. And
Mm,
will you co-sign a note for me?
mm,
So, because he was a multimillionaire. And he said, yeah, sure, Bob, And I was a big shot. I was a real big shot. And my best big shot story is when cell phones first came out. I always tease him about this. This guy's a multimillionaire. I got the cell phone when it first came out. It was a big thing, like the size of a trunk in the middle of your car. It was like, it was a lot of money. And this guy said to me, "Why in the hell would you want a phone in your car?" I'll never forget that. But going back,
Can you
why the
imagine that question today?
yeah,
Why the
why
hell
in
would
the
you?
hell would you want a phone
Why
in your
wouldn't
car?
you want a phone anywhere you are? Right? That's so funny.
Anyway, so this guy co-signed a note for me for $75,000.
Okay.
And the purpose of that note was to pay off my credit cards. And I got the 75K and I didn't pay him off, and now I have all the credit card debt plus 75K. And I managed to do this with several people over the years. And the number got, it was heavy. It was a big, big number. And there was no way I would ever be able to pay this back unless I hit a pick six or the super lotto or, the 10
Yeah.
team, $1,000 parlay. And the only way out was to keep swinging. But I was really good at always making the minimum payments.
Mm,
Like I owed Citibank 90 grand and they
mm.
say send us 320.
Right. Which
So
barely covers the interest, right?
exactly. But I
If
was
if
but
even
I'm
that.
yeah, but I would do that for 12 or 18 months in
Sure.
a row. And
Right.
they go, hey man, we're going to increase your credit line, and
Right.
then they would give me another 10K.
Right.
And so then and well, I could what was I going to do? There was no way out, Eric,
Right.
no way out but
Right.
to continue. And
Right.
then the bets got bigger and bigger and bigger. And then, look, I used to play 10 team football parlays and I used to play 10 parlays cards and I would just zig and zag the games, like mix them up.
Right.
And it was $1,000 on parlay cards, hundred
Right.
dollar parlays. So before kickoff, I was already minus 900, you know,
Insane.
and it was berserk.
And
And
thinking you could hit a 10 team parlay, you might as well
I
play the
couldn't
lotto.
even I couldn't even pick one team, let alone 10. I mean, but there
It's
were
just
times.
insane.
No, there were times though when I had like six, and then oh my God, six, and
Oh, I'm
you know,
4 away.
but this is
Yeah.
listen before the cell
Insanity.
phones and all this kind of stuff. I mean, there was a time, Monday Night Football. That was it. There was one more game, and
Yeah.
there were only three games on TV. There were no ESPN, none of that stuff.
Right.
So come Monday night, you're getting creamed in college football Saturday, creamed Sunday. Here comes Monday, one game left, and the only bets were over, under, or the team.
Yep.
No halftime bets. There
Right.
was no
All these
nothing.
prop bets
If
now. The live betting, you can bet on the next throw of the
Right. So,
quarterback.
and
Yeah.
then you had to pay the bookie Tuesday
Yeah.
morning.
Yeah.
So there was one shot to get out,
Right.
and then so I'm down like 4 grand. So then, well, I got to bet a parlay and a over under, then
Right.
how that ends.
Yep.
It very rarely worked out,
Were
So,
you ever in potential physical danger from any of the bookies because of lack of payment?
um, I have a great story that a friend of mine who was a gambler, I was just 50s, hundreds. Then I graduated to 500, 1,000. But a friend of mine was a real big bettor, like
Mhm.
a lot. And he wanted to bet $10,000 on a game. So I called my bookie and I said, his name, his, I, he had said, they asked your dad. he was a young kid, but his dad was the book. And I said, will you take this $10,000 bet? It was on Pittsburgh Steelers. They were playing the Raiders or something.
Mhm.
Anyway, and I said, this is not for me. You know, I'm a $50 player. Will you take this $10,000 bet? So the guy goes, yeah, he called his dad. He said, we'll take the bet.
Mhm.
This was like on a Thursday, but the game wasn't until Sunday night. So fast Saturday morning, I call them to make my bets. And the guy on the phone was not the guy. And it was the state police
Mm.
were raided by the state police. And I was like, oh my God. So I hung up and I didn't make the bets. But then so I said, oh my God. So I called the guy's wife. I knew that he was my friend. I called his wife and I said, what happened? Yeah, they're in jail. They'll be out tomorrow. They're busted. Don't call. And I said, tell your dad or your grandfather, cancel my tickets to Pittsburgh.
Mm.
Cancel my tickets to Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
And fast forward, the Steelers lose that game. And then he calls me Monday. You owe me $11,000. I said, didn't you get my message? I called Joan and I said, tell your dad cancel the tickets to Pittsburgh. He goes, yeah, I got it. You know, I said, what are you, a travel agent? Jesus. And I said, and because I told my friend said to me, Bob, they're in jail. I said, they're in jail. I said, cancel, cancel. So I did the best I could to cancel,
Wow.
and then I couldn't call back because it was the police are answering the phone. But I did reach his wife. So as far as I was concerned, that bet was canceled.
Hmm.
They threatened me big time. Like you watch, don't walk down the street without a rear view mirror. I'm going to
Wow.
smash your head with a baseball bat.
Jeez.
It was pretty intense. And these were nice Jewish guys, you know, my bookies. It was heavy. So
Wow.
that was about as intense as it ever got.
Okay. Well, that's real shit. That had to
Yeah.
weigh on you. How long was that threat like hanging on you
I was
before you
hanging
could
over.
stop looking over your shoulder?
Well, you know, I want to tell you, believe it or not, got this kid, Alan, was murdered in Las Vegas, and they found him in a shallow grave like 10 years later, you know, and because I knew his younger brother, you know, and that's how he ended up. So, but I never paid the $11,000, and you know, but that's if that was a real story. Canceled the tickets to Pittsburgh.
Wow. Wow. All right, so now let's maybe head towards the piece of the story of your journey where you maybe hit that proverbial rock bottom, as it's known, that ultimately lands you for the first time in recovery, and that was in 1993.
1993. You know, I want to tell you, the first time I called the GA hotline was in 1988.
Okay.
You know, 88. And I called Gamblers Anonymous, whatever it was. And this guy with a Russian accent answered the phone. And I told him, hey, we need to go to this meeting. And I didn't go. I didn't go till 93, 5 years later.
Mm.
And when I into this meeting in Beverly Hills, that's where I went to GA at Beverly Hills. I thought, oh man, there was meetings in Gardena and Hawthorne. And I said, Beverly Hills, I'll meet some rich.
More loans I can get from people. Right.
Right, I'm going to Beverly Hills. I couldn't believe it. So,
That's great.
so I walk into the Beverly Hills meeting on Roxbury, and the guy leading the meeting, he had a Russian accent, and it was that guy George. It was a guy
Oh,
that I talked to in '88.
okay.
I walked into that meeting, and the reason I went to GA is because I won a big way. I was really in. I didn't even know how much debt I was in because I never knew how much I was in debt until I had my pressure relief.
Mhm.
I just know that I had a stack of envelopes
And
to
you
the
were just taking minimum payments and
right,
keeping it going. Got it.
keeping
Okay.
it going, you know. And then so the bottom line is, I went to Del Mar, which is south of here, a couple hours,
Hmm.
and I was there for a conference, and I went in, and I won a lot of money the seventh, eighth, and ninth race. I won about $45,000. I had a trifecta, and that was after so I had like they gave it was like a shoebox with money, and they had to all the guys at the track, they follow you and they see that you have this I had to have a police escort out to my car.
Wow.
Okay, and so I got to the car and I was so excited. I had this money, um, and then I drove home to LA. I had 3 months in arrears in my rent, my apartment. I had 2 months arrears in my car payment. I owed this bookie a ton of money. I had all this debt, and it wasn't enough. So it
Mm.
was and I was meditating at the time, and I really was in this meditative group. And this teacher, he said to me, he knew that I gambled. And he said, I love it. I love gambling. And he goes, Robert, you have nothing. You're 42 years old. You have nothing,
Mm.
nothing, and you're buried alive and you're in debt and you love gambling. He goes, you're a compulsive gambler. That's really the first time I ever heard that term.
Mm.
He said, you need to go to GA. And I said, I want you to go to GA. And he said, don't become a senator or a congressman. Just go and get your work done and just go there, go to GA. So
Okay.
like, I that's when I went back and I found out there's a meeting in Beverly Hills.
Got
And
it.
that was my very first meeting. So
So you went into GA for the first time off of a big win
off of
at
a
the
big
horse.
window, right? But it was
Interesting.
I went nuts because it was not enough, and I
Of
really
course.
I remember having just sitting in my bed, I was crying, and I said, "What will be enough? You
Wow.
know what?"
That's still unique though, right? I think if you talk to every 10 people that come in, nine of those are coming in off of financial big time. The final loss that they could no longer get any dollar scraped together any longer. At
Yeah,
least that
like
was part of my story.
yeah,
Right.
no, but I was over $1 million in debt, and
Yeah.
I couldn't. It was not enough.
Right.
And no
No
way.
win was going to be big enough. Right.
Exactly. No
Yeah.
one was going to be good. And so it was that the realization of talking to this counsel, this spiritual advisor that I had, and just understanding this, that was it. So
Now, how did you come about this spiritual advisor in this life
I
journey?
met this girl and she was in this community. She was doing this thing it was an organization, and she said, you got to come with me to this thing. And this guy was great. And they had a retreat in Apple Valley, and it was amazing. But I was going out there and I was gambling
Right.
and
While you're meditating,
in between meditations. You know?
praying for the next Penn
Right.
State win, right?
Exactly. But
So, all right. So it's your first meeting in 1993. We're going to break there. And when we come back on the other side, we're going to get into all the amazing talk about the rest of the journey, which is very, very significant. And it's really a wonderful journey of recovery. And Robert's going to give us a lot of that wisdom. We'll be right back in the Gambling Recovery Lounge. Welcome back into the Gambling Recovery Lounge. All right, we are now going to flip the page, and Robert's going to now talk to us about what happens when he finds recovery and his first GA meeting in 1993. So, Robert, take it away.
anyway, as the story goes, I find out there's a meeting in Beverly Hills in Roxbury, 8 o'clock on a Tuesday night. So I go to this meeting, and I had no idea what to expect. I thought, you know, these are a bunch of losers, and I mean, I knew about AA. I was never a drinker, but I knew about AA. But so I walk into this room, and I thought I thought it was a punishment. I didn't realize it was a reward. I thought, this is a punishment, and I don't even know what to expect. So I walk into the room, and there's still a couple brothers in the meetings that were in the early days that were there. Anyway, so I walk into the room, and I sit down, and I introduce myself as a newcomer, and they said, just sit around and listen. And there was about 25 people there, men and women. And I started listening to the stories. And this guy, Dave Kay, an older guy, reminded me like of my grandfather. And Dave Kay says, he told a story. I was a liar. There's no more lies. My wife, there's no more lies. And he said, so he was at the bicycle club, which is a poker club. He was playing poker for 2 days. Where are you? Where are you? Where are you? So he had a brand new car, and he tells a story. He wrapped his car around a telephone pole, like just he just slammed on the gas in reverse and crashed into a phone pole so he could go home and tell his wife that he had a car accident, and
Oh my God.
she would believe him.
Wow.
She would believe him. And I said, oh my God. And then there was a woman in this room. Her name was Kim, a Korean woman, really nice woman. And she told this story. She was pregnant, and she was playing poker also with one of those clubs, playing poker. She was pregnant, drinking wine, smoking cigarettes,
Mm.
and she's pregnant through her entire pregnancy. And her water broke at the poker table. Her water broke at the poker table. And they said, Kim, you have to leave. You're having a baby.
Oh my goodness.
That's a true story.
She
And
still didn't want to get out of there, huh?
exactly. And the ambulance came and they
Oh.
took her away and she had her kids. So this is what I heard at my first meeting, you know? So
Did you
then I,
instantaneously then feel like, oh, I'm not the most fucked up person in the room? There's other
well, he
people
said,
as
well,
bad in there.
so finally after 40 minutes, they said, okay, we have a newcomer, Robert, stand up, and I basically, I said, I'm a liar, I'm a cheat and I'm a thief, and I got a standing ovation. This is the only place on the planet where you go, I'm a liar, a cheat, and a thief. And give me a
Right.
plaque,
You got an Academy Award. Right.
Exactly. So I go, oh my God. But anyway, so I told a little bit about my story, just a tiny, I only had a minute or two to share. And then, but after the meeting, this guy, Dave, like this older guy, said, Robert, listen, first of all, welcome. Second of all, you can do this. He really said to me, you can do this. And he said, meet me for lunch at this at this car wash, on Robertson Boulevard. Will meet me there at noon, and we'll go out for lunch. And I was working. I had a job, so I met him for lunch, and that was the lunch that changed my life. And this guy, he was so concerned, and he said to me, "You can do this." He goes, "You're an instant winner. Right now, you are an instant winner." And he said, "You win every bet you don't make. You win every single bet you don't make."
So
And
true.
he was the nicest man. And he said, we didn't talk about steps or anything. He said, what I need you to do is call me every day. Just call me every morning and to tell me how you're doing. Even if you have nothing to say, call me and say, Dave, I have nothing to say. And for some reason, he was such a nice guy, which is so encouraging.
Mm.
And he said, just keep coming to meetings and just call me every day. And that's what I did. I followed that instruction. And
He wanted you to be accountable to him,
accountable,
right?
exactly.
Which you never were, right?
Never accountable, and he was, then I went to his house and he had this beautiful home, and he told me about his story. He was first came to GA in 1957, one of the original meetings in
Wow.
57, and then he went out and gambled and came back in 1985.
Holy, it's
Came back in
28 years later. Holy crap.
exactly. And I hear and this and he told me that he has an IRA and he's got money, all this kind of stuff, and so he was like my age now when I met him. But he was a
Wow.
sponsor for 30 some years, and I was with him when not when he passed, but he was in a senior living home, Jewish home, and I went
Mm.
every Sunday, and and we always went for lunch. And even when he could hardly get in the car and went for lunch, and I just, I had a chance. I have incredible tapes, which I'm going to play for you one day, Eric. I have interviews of him about gambling,
Oh,
you know,
wow. I'd love to hear that. Yeah.
in the 40s and the 50s, the
Yeah.
poker clubs. It's incredible. So he was a beautiful man, and I met a lot of great guys. And finally, after about 4 months, I kept on going to this Roxbury meeting, just one meeting a week. I went
Mhm.
to Roxbury, and then they said they had this meeting. They said, Robert, do you want to be the treasurer? And I said, what?
You
You
want
want
me to handle money?
me to hold the money?
Did you not listen to how much debt I'm?
Yeah, exactly. You want me to hold the money? And they said, yeah, take this commitment, And so I took the commitment, and they were 6 months commitment.
Mm.
And Eric, I counted that money every week. It was, $22.23. And I counted it and counted it and counted it
Right.
and made sure it was there. And, I was totally accountable. And, and I
Right.
finished that 6 month term as treasurer. And then I was appointed secretary.
Mm.
And so then those 2 6 months commitments got me a year.
Got you. Yeah. And so you got into service work really
I
quick, and
exactly.
that made, yeah. And I definitely, as we go on here, want to talk about that. Real quick question back to the first meeting, the 20 questions I assume they did with you.
Yeah.
Do you remember, were you a 20 for 20? If there were any
Uh,
no's, do you remember which ones and why?
I always say that was the first test I ever aced in my life.
And the last one.
But yes to all of them.
Okay.
And just did you ever borrow a financial gambling? And I used to, I always threatened suicide. Like I remember telling my mom when my parents, when they finally cut me off, said, Robert, no more. I used to say, I'm going to kill myself. I'll show you. I'll show you. I'm going to kill myself.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I was 20. I went
Okay.
20 in.
And real quick for the listeners that aren't familiar with GA and what we're talking about there, when you go into your first GA meeting as a newcomer, we all get asked 20 questions, and the 20 questions are just really a barometer to see where are you kind of at in the spectrum of compulsive gambling. And there's kind of this generalization that if you answer yes to seven or more of those questions, you're probably in the right place. And so many of us, when we go in the first time, when we're being honest, we're either at 20 for 20 or damn near close to it. I think I was an 18 for 20, and
They're
then
great, they're great.
ultimately I got there to 20 to 20 when I was really honest with everything.
They're great questions about, did you do this? Did you lose time from work on and on? And so
Mm-hmm.
I always say there should be a 21st question.
What
If
is it?
if you're in the casino and you found a wallet with 350s and 420s, what would you do with that wallet? You know, the answer is, I know what I would do. I would take the cash and throw it in the trash, but in
Oh,
other,
well,
in
it
other
has
words,
to be a yes, no, though.
it,
Like if you have a subjective question, that could be
would you turn
anything.
it
Is it?
in? If you're in
Oh,
the
okay. Would you
casino,
turn it in? Oh,
would you
okay.
turn it in?
It's
But
like a moral
that's
question.
that's the 21st question. So,
Hey, you know what? You never know. It could happen at some point.
so I heard, once again, they read these things at the meetings, pressure relief. And
Yeah.
I still, over after even, it was a year and a half, I just never put everything down on the table, and finally I had the courage to say to Dave and this guy, Bill B, who's still in the program in Florida, and Larry A, who's going to be tomorrow, celebrating 32 years at the beach. And these guys said, you have to do this pressure relief,
Mm,
bring everything. And I was single at the time, bring everything. And I brought everything. And then we finally wrote it down on paper.
mm.
And it was devastating. It was intense.
That's the
And
first time you really actually looked at your
I
debt.
mean, I knew I owed this guy 40 and that guy 20 and
Yeah,
this
yeah,
Citibank. I mean, I knew the numbers, but I never sat down with a calculator
yeah.
and put it down. So I had to I still have my Excel sheets handwritten,
Hmm.
you know,
And you
five,
made a collage. If
yeah,
I don't know that I've ever. Well, you could
well,
show it to me at least,
uh,
but the viewers or the listeners won't be able to
upstairs.
see it.
I followed, these are the instructions at
Yeah.
the relief, if you don't mind me sharing.
Yeah. No.
It
Absolutely.
was,
And the details. I know sometimes. Sometimes it's that whole thing. Don't talk about money. I don't really believe in that. I've always been very open about my debt. If you're comfortable doing that, it is what it
over a
is. And
million, Eric,
okay.
over a million. And I'll be honest with you, I withheld, I withheld one note because I was so embarrassed.
You weren't embarrassed about the million, but that
Right.
million,
Because
what?
it was
Why?
like
It was what?
millions, 160 or whatever it was.
That
So
160 was unbearable to say.
right.
Well, I had a
Anyway,
story like that
so
too.
I have my hand is shaking and they're dictating my letter. This cut your credit cards, take your scissors, cut them in half, and and write a letter, dear Citibank, dear Wells Fargo, dear Bank of America. Um, I'm 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 at this point I want you to cancel my credit line. And I'm in Gamblers Anonymous. I'm asking you to freeze the interest and give me a 90-day moratorium. At the end of 90 days, I'm going to contact you and give you the plan of how I'm going to pay this back.
Mhm.
And so I followed that direction. And I owed a bookie. I owed this guy Marty. I owed him like 9 grand or something like that. And he was expecting me like the next day or to come in and pay him this money. And this guy Bill B. First of all, Bill B. When he saw what I put on the table, he said, "You're not going to make it." I was teasing about this. He goes, "You're not going to make it," but that motivated me. Anyway,
Like, you're not going to tell me what I'm
no,
not going to
but
do.
when he said they said, "Tell this guy Marty, give him $100 and tell him you're in GA and you'll try to get him 200 next week." And
Mhm.
I was scared to death. I was scared to death. And I went in there and I was shaken, and that was another like thought. I don't know what he was going to do, but he said okay. And I heard from all the banks, and they did freeze my interest for 90 days. And then I started, I was working and I started making them. And I'll show you my Excel sheets.
Mhm.
January, February, March, April, May, June, July, 5 pages,
Mm,
uh, $81. And the next month I paid him 93 and on. And
mhm.
I started digging out. Um, and then listen, I got very, very fortunate. I think a higher power move, and I made a gigundo. I came up with something, and I made a lot of money. I made enough money, and I got married, by the way, in 1997. So I'd already
Okay.
been in the program for 4 years, and that's when I met Tracy.
Okay.
And uh, I got, and she knew I was buried, and she knew about. She goes, she had a good job. She goes, work on your. She was very, you work on your debt.
So you were
And
honest, totally honest with her from the very beginning
yeah,
about the debt.
yeah,
Okay.
because what? She was at my apartment, and in walked Dave K, this old man.
Mhm.
I
Your
was having,
sponsor.
we were having dinner, and my sponsor walks into the room, and she thought the guy he was a burglar. I'm no, we always
That's
talked about that.
hysterical.
I mean, who is it? This is Dave K. Oh, who's he's a sponsor? So that's yeah, full transparency.
That's great. Okay.
And she was very generous, and and I was once again. So the bottom line is, I made a lot of money. I came up with something that was gigundo, and I made a commission that allowed me to pay off this debt. And
Wow.
I didn't go BK. I
Okay.
didn't go bankruptcy, and I paid off this debt. Sometimes I have, I go, what was, are you kidding me? But I did. And and then next thing you know, I got 2 children. I'm still in the program. My
Now, before you go there, I have a question for you about that. So when you pay off this massive debt, yes, you have multiple years in the program, you have a sponsor, all that stuff. Was there a part of you that for even moments said, now I have free reign to go out and fuck everything else up again?
I want to say that I don't, you know what? I was done, Eric. I really was done, but I did relapse, which we'll talk about. But, I was really excited at the time, and I had listen, I didn't have anything. I remember when Dave, we went to buy a couch, and I was scared to death to buy a couch,
Mm,
and this is when I first came into the program, and went with me to IKEA, and we bought a couch and brought it back to my apartment, so going from not having a couch, being buried alive, to being out, it was miraculous. It was really, really miraculous.
mm.
And uh the one thing I did was keep going to meetings, keep going to meetings. And I moved down to Orange County, and I got very involved in GA down in Orange County. We bought a
Okay.
house in Aliso Viejo,
Okay.
and I was deeply involved. And yeah, I'd already been in the program up here like it for 5 or 6 years. And then, I went down to Orange County, and um I did something. I created something that I sold to the casinos. I said, I'm going to get my money back, and I created this thing, and I sold to the casinos, all the Indian casinos, and it was for the slot players, and so I got these checks from casinos without gambling,
Mm.
and it was quite successful. I sold like 1.5 million of these things, and I wasn't that proud of it, but I thought, if this thing is going to make somebody gamble, it was a little device to hold your frequent loser cards. I called them frequent
Hmm.
loser cards that you put in the thing is thick in the slot machine,
Mm.
and you get points. I made a little thing to hold your card, you know,
Oh,
and
okay.
it was made in America, and it was really a business card holder, a credit card holder, but I called it the slot card keeper. And I got a mailing list, and I mean, there was nothing like it, and it was incredible.
So now,
So,
when was your first kid born?
Allie was born February 6, 99,
99. Okay.
6, 99. Um,
So you have
so
6 years in the program at
yeah,
that point.
exactly. And
Okay.
then and that was incredible. And Nathan was born 15 months later.
Okay.
So I got 2 kids. We're driving Mercedes Benzes. We're living in a beautiful house in Aliso Viejo with a swimming pool, and life is phenomenal.
Life's good. You're in
Life is
recovery.
good.
You're feeling good. And were you as active in Orange County GA
Yes,
as you had been in? Okay.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I became a trustee, and I
Okay.
was I was on the board of regents. Um, but then I got I got fired from the Board of Regents because I missed three meetings. And the
Mm,
third meeting, I had no choice but to miss because we were moving back to LA. And it was movers were there. It was Friday, Saturday, and so I had to resign my position as
we take those guidance code things seriously.
yeah, really,
Yeah.
it was pretty intense. Anyway, look at the tragedy. Look, I was going to China a lot because I had a lot of manufacturing there. So, in about I don't know the exact dates, 2008, something like that. I go to China, and I sell this casino in Macau. Macau makes Vegas look like a 7-Eleven. I mean, it's
Okay.
incredible.
Okay.
It's incredible what's going on there. So, and then I'm in the middle of China. This casino is full of Chinese people, packed 10 o'clock in the morning. And I have this successful transaction. I actually sold something to China, which is really like selling ice to the Eskimos. And I'm looking at these machines with dragons and all these Asian machines. And I said, oh hell, so I played some slots, you know, and I didn't win. I lost. I didn't even know. I just played these slots and that was it. But I
So
lost.
what's happening? I mean, when you're in that moment before you put in the first coin,
No, I'm said, you know what? I'm going to get away with this because I'm in the
got
middle of China.
got it.
Okay. I'm
So
going to get,
you fully went through the process. You contemplated it. You knew
I said I
you
will not get caught.
you won't get caught, and you're gonna like you had decided I will go back to GA back home, and I will just pretend this never happened.
Exactly. There's no
Got it.
reason. Why would I put my foot in my mouth? Because, you know, I mean, it was literally, I'm not kidding you, the middle of China. And so I did it and it was it was, you know, I just dropped it. I didn't come back and gamble. I didn't do, you know, but then a couple months later, I did go to Vegas for a conference that I've gone to every year in my industry.
Mhm.
And I was staying at the Mirage and I'm walking past the high limit slots
Mhm.
and I look in there and I go, oh, what the heck?
Mhm.
I go in I go into the high limit slots and I put $100 into a $5 machine. And this was, I think it was the late 2008. I forget when it was. And I play $15. You could play three buttons and it pulled the thing. Then I won this huge jackpot, like 10 grand. And I was like, oh my God, this is incredible. And they came and they gave me the papers. You have to sign those papers. And like an idiot, I didn't even think about it. I signed my home address, my actual home address I put there. And
Oh,
and then so now this is a true story. You can't make this up. Now there's $85 in the machine still on the thing. And the woman goes, do you want to play again? And I said, sure. While they were still standing there, $10,000,
again.
two in a row.
Oh my God.
Two. Now I think, oh my God, now I think I'm on candid camera and or some prank show because this doesn't happen. And
Right.
now I'm going, oh my, now I'm busted.
The fix is on.
No, I'm on candid camera now. The whole
But
world can see this on TV, this thing in Vegas. So I was horrified. But I got that money and I went to the hotel and I put it in the safe deposit box in the hotel and I didn't gamble again. I didn't gamble again.
Mhm.
That was it. I came home and I had this money and cash and I put it in a safe deposit box and almost kind of forgot about it. But then back into the room. Hey, I'm Robert G. I haven't gambled in 14 years and 23. But
Mhm.
I had gambled and I lied and I gambled twice in that China incident in Vegas. And I didn't have the courage to fess up. And it
Mhm.
was really killing me because I knew I had done this, you
Mhm.
know.
And you didn't even tell your sponsor.
No, not till a little bit later. But the
Right.
bottom line is, uh, fast forward, I'm at a rock concert with my friends, and Tracy calls me, "Are you gambling?" I was in a concert. Are you gambling? I said, Tracy, I haven't gambled since 1993. What are you talking about? And
Oh.
she had those forms from the Mirage.
Oh.
Real.
So she opened your
Yeah, well, she
she
saw
opened your oh, of course.
She
Oh,
saw
okay.
Mirage Las Vegas. Robert,
Of
you
course
know,
she opened
yeah.
it. Okay.
Oh yeah, and
Yeah.
so she's got two, not one, but two of these slips, And I was there, and that was it.
You
And
were
that was
done.
May 22nd of 2009. And that was the luckiest day of my life, the most fortunate day of my life, because
Mm,
finally I was busted. And she was like, it was really, it was intense. And Dave, we called Dave, and he, like, in a race car, got to the house,
mm,
and we sat down, and it was like this big intervention. And, and I just, and I fessed up. But then I had to do the real fess up. It was as bad as it was with my wife. And then I had to go to
to the
GA,
room. Yeah.
to the room, and I had
Yeah.
to say, guys, and a lot of people, believe me, I was like the centerfold of GA Monthly. Okay. I, uh, I paid back $1 million in debt. I'm married. I'm driving Mercedes Benz. I got two great kids,
Right.
on and on
The
and on.
perfect redemption
Yeah,
story. Right.
everything, man.
Right.
I was really, and here I am. Hey, guys, I've been looking you right in the eye, lying to you, and and I hope I hope you'll forgive me. And it was told to me, it doesn't matter if they forgive me, it matters if I forgive me.
Right.
And that's what they said about my wife, Tracy. She'll never, I don't know if she'll ever trust me. I mean, but I trust me, and
Yeah.
that's what I had to work on. So I was the
How did your kids react to it?
well, they were they were still young. They were only nine. They were only 8 and 9, or 9 and 10.
Okay.
But they knew Daddy's going to GA. Daddy goes to GA. So I was present for my children, and they know the story.
Yeah.
They're older now, and they know the story. And because of GA, I told this. There was a guy named Larry B. I heard at a convention in Manhattan Beach before I was married. He said, "Thanks to GA, my kids have a shot."
Mm.
And I'll never forget that. It went to my heart. And I got to see him in Chicago. He was there, and I said, Larry, he has dementia. He
Oh,
would,
I met him as well there. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
but he's a guy. I said, Larry, and I told the story, and his wife, she was crying. And she said, we came to this conference, Robert, to hear what you just said. Because,
Wow.
and it was a really heavy moment for me. But thanks to GA, my kids have a shot. And that went right to my heart. And based on how I was brought up, my kids grew up. How do you feel? What do you think? Did you have any dreams last night? Do you have any questions? I made a dad questionnaire that they had to fill out once a month, and if they filled out the survey, and that we would take them to Cold Stone for ice cream or something, But
Mm.
my kids learned bright and early that they counted, their opinion counted, and they were heard. And so I got really lucky to be present for my children. That's the biggest gift I've gotten from this program. It has nothing to do with money or anything. It's just that my kids are successful and confident and honest. They don't have to cheat. But I'll tell a funny story about Nathan when he was a little kid. He was like 6 or 7, and he learned how to play war. Like when you split the deck,
Yeah.
and you
Oh, yeah.
all he wanted to do was play war, play war. So I'm cooking eggs in the morning. He goes, Dad, let's play war. I said, okay, Nate, you split the deck. We'll play war. We'll eat at the dinner table. So I'm cooking, and I'm looking at my son, and I watch him take all 4 aces and put it in his pile. Okay. I'm watching this, and I go, oh my God, this is incredible. So I'm still faster than him. I bring the food to the table, and I
Yeah.
switch piles. Yeah, I switch the deck. Now I have the thing with the 4 aces. So, okay, honey, let's play. Boom. I turned over that ace, and the look on his face, I will never forget the look. He couldn't believe that, because he loaded his deck and I had the aces. And I said, Nathan, you cheated. You're so lucky that I saw this, and I'm your dad. And we had this big conversation about cheating, you
Mm.
know, and it was a beautiful moment. But this moment happened because I was present,
Yeah.
and I was right there, and I saw that happen. And I would say that was one of the greatest moments of my recovery, to be there and witness this. And Nathan, he has no interest in gambling and nothing, nothing. He thinks it's the dumbest thing ever. And so that's the miracle of the program.
Yeah. And I mean,
Yeah.
seeing your kids at your 15-year anniversary meeting a couple months
Yeah.
back was a beautiful thing. So I mean,
Yeah. And
that's what it's all about.
they know about this, and they know about
Yeah.
me, and Nate loves to hear the stories. And I told him everything I shared today. They know about this.
Yeah.
So I'm grateful, beyond grateful.
So let
Um,
me, so you, and obviously you've now had another it's like 15 years apart where from the time you came in to the relapse in '08 and now 15 more years. What would you say, like if you picked out one or two things, like theme wise, the big difference in the last 15 years of how you approach your recovery and the fellowship versus the first 15 years, if there's anything specific you can say that you learned from where what happened in 2008, though we can never say we're free from gambling forever, we can only have today, but you have to believe your mindset is different than where you were in '08. Yeah.
Absolutely. And once you look at the cornerstone of my recovery is the fellowship, period. I mean, I have done the steps and I'm back on the steps right now, by the way, but it was this fellowship and it was the trust in my fellows and, that I violated as badly as you could violate it, so I had this opportunity to take on the fellowship. And then I always say I'm one of the old guys now that was here for me. And beautiful men that I met, and like Bud A and Dave K, and so many guys that have passed on. And so I honor them by staying here. My commitment to them is I'm never going to do this and I'm going to stay here. The difference for me was, taking this fellowship more seriously and understanding the value of this fellowship. And um, it's like if I was told, if you're thinking about something you can't talk to somebody about, you're thinking about the wrong thing,
Mm,
period. And
great,
and
great
I
advice.
learned that the hard way, like in other words, I should have said when I came back hey guys, Dave told my sponsor, but I did meet him and we worked through it. But the biggest difference for me right now is that I honor my honesty and my true recovery, and I want to make it known, I'm not the only guy in the room that's lying about gambling.
Mm.
No pun intended. I would bet on that.
All right.
But
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
that's the difference. And I'm there's no finish line. That's what I learned. There's no finish line. And the yellow book is really well written. It starts off Gamblers Anonymous is a fellowship. The first word is fellow. Fifth word on that book is Gamblers Anonymous is a fellowship.
Right,
It doesn't say Gamblers Anonymous is a 12-step program and
right.
it's a fellowship, it's very well written. There's couple things I disagree with, but it says having practiced the steps. Never anywhere does it having perfected the steps. There's
Yeah,
no such thing as perfecting the steps because we're humans.
right.
And so I just I take it really seriously now, and I take my time really seriously. And I've come to, it was all gambling. I had low self-esteem, Eric. There was no I did, I had zero esteem. This program has given me an opportunity to have esteem. And there, I try to differentiate esteem versus ego, you know, like I'm a great guy. And now I understand that I'm a great guy. And I had a difficult time with that, understanding who I am. And I'm still learning who I am, by the way. And, I'm back with a guy and I'm on step 4 again on
Mm.
some amends and that I never made. And they're kind of tugging at my legs, and I gotta get rid of this. So I'm still working the program. And
It's awesome messaging. I mean, because it speaks, I think, to your humility that, as you just talked about, after all these years and all the progress and flourishing now in your life, to be able to say, "Oh, I'm working the steps again because I'm still a work in progress." I mean, that's great messaging
yeah.
to what the program stands for. What would you say today is like if there's a thing in real recovery that you struggle with the most today, whether it's part of the step work or just anything in general, what would you say is your biggest challenge right now?
uh, well, I get, I think my ego is still a challenge, and look, I knew nothing when I got here, and I know a lot more now, but I still, I'm successful but I mean, what is success and what is enough? I struggle with what is enough. Like I still love what I do. I'm really blessed that I love what I do. And I'm a commission sales guy for 35 years, which there's no scholarships, it's
All right.
you gotta earn, you gotta swing to earn.
Yeah.
And and I kind of wish I just want to be peaceful and be honest and just stay connected to people and help people. I have a letter that Dave K wrote me. He said, Robert, you discovered the best way you can help yourself is to help somebody else.
Mm.
And that's my mantra, and that's why I go to these meetings and these young kids, it's so gratifying for me that, people, take my opinion or they want my opinion or they call me and that kind of stuff. And I'm so grateful that I could call somebody else. I called Frank uh, on Friday because there was this thing going on in the stock market and I had this, and I said, Frank, what should I, and I knew what I should do. Forget about it, you know,
Yeah. Right.
because it would not be big enough and there'd be resentments and why didn't it? And he thanked me so much, but I said, no, I'm thanking you, man. So that's the tool. And
Yeah.
that's going to go back to if you're thinking about something you can't share with somebody, it's the wrong thing. So I was on the edge of thinking, this will be good. And I was never a stock trader. I have the funniest stock story because the long time ago was Ponderosa Steakhouses. They were going to go public and open up 500 restaurants. My friend told me this, when they were 500 steakhouses and the stock was like a penny stock. So I put everything I had into it. And like the next day, mad cow disease broke out and every cow in Texas dropped dead.
Oh, jeez.
These guys were opening up steakhouses, there was no meat. And it went off the boards. That was my stock story. So thank God whatever. I always say if they did a DNA test of all this, we have an L chromosome, which stands
Yep.
for loser, and
Right.
you have a G chromosome, which stands for gambler,
Yeah.
you know. But now we have a W that stands for, I mean, an F chromosome that stands for fortunate. I'm fortunate to be here, really understand, that what I have here. And, it's, I'm a GA addict.
Yeah. If we're going to be addicted to anything, right? That
Right.
there's the one thing that's okay. Um, so I like to always close with this question of what do you tell and you obviously come across a lot of newcomers in the rooms. Um, but even if it's a person you just encountered on the street who is not even in a GA room, but somebody is coming, and they're all coming in droves, right? We see what's happening with the proliferation of gambling, sports gambling, online gambling, the legalization. It's going crazy, right? And we're seeing an increase in the rooms. But what do you tell the person on day one who just thinks this is impossible? I can't stop gambling no matter what I want and think that I can do. I don't know how to stop. What's your words of wisdom for that person?
Well, well, everything I learned in this program, I learned from somebody else. Okay. And I can embellish these thoughts and this wisdom with my own experience. But I'll never forget Dave K saying to me, "You're an instant winner when you walk in this room, and you win every bet you don't make. And this is not who you are. This is just something you did, and now you don't do it anymore." Those are the exact words I say to these newcomers. And I always say, guys, even if you gamble, come back. Just keep coming back. Nobody stopped until they were ready. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know one single person that ever stopped until they were ready.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not whatever that light moment is, just keep coming back, And I say to kids, like I haven't sponsored anybody in a while because I used to get too vested in their success. And
Mm-hmm.
there were a lot of disappointments, but I call people, I'm a board member. I said, oh, you could call me 24/7. I'm here to, I call these members my board of directors. That goes
Mm-hmm.
back. I have a board I could go to and say, hey, listen to this. But I tell these new kids, call me, and when I see somebody that wants it more than I want it, then I get more deeply involved. And
Mm.
no, Eric, you've been here for a while. It's a swinging door.
Right. Absolutely.
People go 20-0 on those questions and they never come back.
Right.
And
Right.
so when a newcomer, I talk about the solution. There is a solution, and that's I I surfaced on the step 11 about attraction rather than promotion
Yeah.
and the unity steps, and that was really great back in 1957. And I understand that was designed to protect people's anonymity,
Right.
and I respect anonymity more than I respect anything. But there are people like myself that I'm proud of my recovery. I'm proud of my affiliation with this organization, and I'm telling people there's a solution. There's a solution, and that 800 gambler, there should be a tagline.
Right.
There's the solution. That's why you're calling. There's an old
Right.
joke. There's an old
Right.
joke. A guy has a gambling problem and he calls the hotline. He goes, the dealer has a 7 and I have a 5. What should I do? That's his gambling problem.
Well, that's right. And I think I've had some of these conversations with people at the National Council too. And a lot of the 800 gambler calls they get are people sort of along what you just said, are people thinking, oh, I need to know how to get my bonus money out of the casino.
Right.
That's my problem. And so there's messaging that lacks quite a bit, that can be improved upon. But I think the good thing is there's with a lot of, I think, legislation that's in flight, that might get some attention in a different way than it ever has before. I think there's hope of movement, and there's a lot of
Recognition.
great people out there doing a lot of great work in the recovery space, and
Absolutely.
what we do, our part in the GA rooms and whatever we do outside of the rooms, out there in the world to keep spreading the message and helping as many people as we can. And I know how passionate, you share the passion that I have in it, and we need a lot more of that to keep helping it, because without a doubt, we are in a total public health crisis with gambling addiction. It is going to continue to be the fastest growing addiction, by miles and miles, and it's not going to get better anytime soon, unfortunately.
When I was a kid, I mean, the analogy is it's a disease, and then now it's recognized as a disease. And when I was a kid, younger, if you had cancer, it was a secret. You were embarrassed to tell your neighbors or whatever that, oh my God, my mother has cancer, whatever. It was really hush hush, and that's the same thing with the gambling, it's people, you're there. It's like it's a disease. And if I always say, if you got to GA room, you belong here. Nobody was ever walking down the street going, I think I'll go to GA.
Right.
Anybody that comes into this room belongs here, and period. But so few stay, but some people also, like, they bowl on Monday, they play softball on Tuesday, they go to GA on Wednesday. It's
Yeah.
just like another activity,
Yeah.
which is still okay. And there's hopefully you'll hear something
Yeah.
that's going to bring you back,
Yeah. Hey, let me ask you your thoughts on, because I know sports gambling in particular, and you and I, that was our history. Today, we're in a very different world of not just the legalization of sports gambling in most states in this country, but the live betting opportunities that are on everybody's phone. So it's hitting the kids younger and younger in college, and it's, at the sporting event, you're sitting at a baseball game and you can bet on the next pitch of what you're watching, right? My question to you, though, because I get this a lot too from the young guys in particular coming in who have sports gambling problems, is they don't know how to foresee their life, not just without gambling, but without watching sports. It's their whole life. What's your take on early in recovery? And I'll give my own as well, but I'd like to hear what you have to say. How a young person in that situation, if they're at home on a Sunday and they lived for football or college football Saturday, do you think there's this period of time where you just have to disconnect from it completely to get healthy? Or do you kind of just think every person has to just figure that out for themselves?
Well, that saying, if you hang out in a barber shop, you're going to get a haircut.
Right.
The thing is, what I try to do is draw the analogy, draw the picture. And once you get the picture, it's a lot easier. I mean, I once again, thank goodness I got out before all this technology, and they turned a football game into a penny slot machine.
That's right.
It's berserk. When I was in the game, was you bet the over under or the side that there was no halftime, but none of this. So
Right.
it's brutal. Um, but I tell these kids, do you think LeBron James gives a crap if he makes a free throw?
Right.
Or if he makes a reception or scores a field goal, they could give a crap. But that half a point or that point, that costs you your rent. And
That's
you
right.
have to, and he's getting in his Rolls Royce and driving to a restaurant, and he missed two free throws, and so look what you're doing, and like, listen, putting $1,000 on a game, I couldn't name one person on the team, but you see this number, 3.5
Yeah.
or 6, and you go, I know, we know that's we all knew the results.
Yeah.
And so I just try to draw the imagery, guys, maybe you shouldn't watch it right now. And I tell them how great it is when you could walk away in a double overtime with 4 seconds left and the phone rings and or you got to take the dog out. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And, it takes a long time to get there,
Yeah.
but it can also be there in an instant.
Yeah.
If you could draw the picture and create the imagery,
Yeah.
so that's, you know, that's,
Yeah.
that's where I am with this.
Yeah, I went over a year, I think, without watching at all, it was for me, it was necessary because I was triggered by, even no, even if following a score without even watching a game on your phone or whatever, I would start playing out in my head. This was early in my recovery. I was playing out in my head the line and all that stuff, and it was just like getting into that bad mental place. It was as bad to me as making the bet. Because for me, gambling was generally not about the money anyway. It was just about the action. So if I was getting into the same mindset, I was going down a very slippery slope that ultimately was going to lead to something bad. And what I tell them is, obviously every person has to go through it in their own way, but what I say is, when you stop watching sports so much, you start to figure out sports is maybe not as interesting as you thought it was,
Right.
and maybe you get to a place where you can at some point in the future look at a game and truly watch it for the athleticism or a team that you may be rooting for or whatever, because that's your hometown. And I do think that's person by person, but I try to paint the picture that not watching sports for a period of time as you prioritize your recovery, because this is the thing that's going to kill you. Not watching a baseball game or a football game, that's not going to kill you. You can go find something else to do, right?
When you
But
when you
but
when you
what's
bet with your mind, you lose it. That's what I was told.
that's a good one.
Yeah.
That is a good. Yeah, I just think that's going to continue to be such a big topic with what's happening in the sports
Animals,
wagering right.
animals running in circles
Yep.
and men in tights running up and down a field. You
Right.
know,
And this
it's
becomes the whole life of some
oh,
people.
it's
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 unbelievable.
a
But
it's a
once
bad
again,
way to live.
the message, Eric, if anything, is, as I say, there is a solution,
Yep.
and this program is the solution. It has a 100% success rate for anybody that's willing to just
Absolutely.
take it.
And as I always say, recovery in GA is not for people who need it, because we all need it if we're here. You have to want it, and
Right.
you have to want it more than you want to gamble. And until you do, you're going to keep going out, but
Today was opening day. Today was, I went to Penn State. I
mm,
haven't missed Penn State opening day, and I was in a meeting at kickoff. I was at the meeting, and I still don't even know the result, but I'll get it when we hang up. But
that's an amazing. Yeah. I mean, I know, I knew today was kind of opening day, but same with me. 12 hours later from opening day, I think we are here. I have no idea who won any game. I have not looked at any game. And that is a total miracle, because my life was around that entire thing, morning
right,
to night, every weekend, for years and years. So it is a true miracle to have the compulsion to gamble removed by working the program. And I know that that's how it's worked for me too. So
it's
um,
filling.
it's just
Life is, it's I'm grateful for this time with you today.
Yeah, it's been awesome. Look, I didn't know the thief, cheat, horrible Robert. But I know the Robert that I've met in the last few years, and I am so grateful that you've been in my path. I consider you one of my mentors in this program, and just hearing your wisdom at any meeting in these kinds of scenarios, being involved with you more out, even outside of GA and what we're both involved in at the state level and national level, and trying to really broaden the scope of bringing help to what is just the fastest growing crippling destruction of an addiction out there. So I love you, brother. Thanks so much for doing this. It was such a pleasure. All right. If you'd like to email the show, give us your thoughts, or ask a question of either Alyssa or myself, or a message that you want us to relay to Robert, please go ahead and email the show. You can send it to Eric, ERIC, at thegamblingrecoverylounge.com, or Alyssa, ALYSSA, at thegamblingrecoverylounge.com. And we will get back to you. So thanks very much again for coming into the lounge for experience number 9 with Robert. Thank you again, Robert. It was amazing. And we will be back with you very shortly on experience number 10 in the Gambling Recovery Lounge. Have a great night, everybody.